Hey everybody, welcome to Social Media Simplified. I'm going to give it a few minutes while everybody starts to kind of trickle in. And as you start to join, if you could open up the chat, and in the chat window, if you can drop what industry or business you're in, what platforms you're currently on, and one challenge that you are currently facing when it comes to social. Your chat window is at the bottom of your screen. Hopefully everybody is familiar with Zoom when you're in here. Start dropping stuff in there. And as far as Q&A goes, there's a separate window for Q&A. So if you can plan to use Q&A for any questions that you have. And if we have time at the end, I will spend a few minutes going through those questions and answering them. So again, if you're just joining us, you can take a second to drop in the chat what industry or business you're in, what platforms you are currently on, and what your biggest challenge is when it comes to social. And if you're tuning in on Facebook or watching this after the fact on YouTube, go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to plan to revisit your comments and get in touch with you there as well. So we have tourism and etiquette, animals and orthotics, entertainment, voiceover, great. Instagram, LinkedIn. We will definitely talk about both of those. Well, welcome and thank you all for being here today. I'm going to go ahead and screen share with you and take a few minutes to introduce myself and walk you through some of the things that we will cover in today's Social Media Simplified. I'm going to try and simplify it as much as I can. Unfortunately, social media, as I'm sure you all know, for the sheer reason you're here, it's its own beast, and it's tough to simplify. But I think if you can change your point of view on how you look at it, how you look at social, how you think about how you interact there, it'll feel a little bit more manageable. So my goal is to accomplish that with you guys here today. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, hopefully you guys can all see that. Everything kind of disappeared and now I see what you're seeing, I think. So Social Media Simplified. So I'm Jessica. I am a digital strategist, consultant, self-proclaimed multi-hyphenate creative. And as a creative and both entrepreneur, I'm personally drawn to social media and what it offers businesses, brands, and entrepreneurs. So my career started in linear television over 10 years ago. So 16 years actually. It is my goal to really work with clients across the board to offer them a fresh perspective when it comes to social. So what that means is, for me, my approach is always content first. I'm invested in the story. And I want to work with clients, not for them, in helping them maximize their results on social. So together with you, I help you define your goals, set your KPIs, and create content that is for the community that your brand or business serves. So as far as what this webinar will include, I think more so than ever now, the age of digital has never been more real. I'm sure a lot of you have used the last year. Social is often the place that we look first when we're deciding if we want to work with a brand or a business. Digital is not, it's not an option anymore. So this webinar is for you if you've ever felt overwhelmed or stuck when it comes to social. If you've ever questioned the amount of time that you're spending on social and what it's actually doing for your business. If you're ready to find your formula, I'm going to help you hopefully do that here in the next 30 to 40 minutes. And this webinar is also for you if you're ready to stop showing up on social, and I'll explain what that means later. And if you want to start connecting and converting. we're living in this age where social and digital in general, like I said, can no longer be a second option. But tackling it shouldn't come with this mentality that is, oh, shoot, I should post, or this anxiety. And then you scramble to get something up. And then you wonder, why am I not getting results? Time for a small business, business owner, solopreneur, entrepreneur, whatever you want to call yourself, is more valuable than any other, asset you have as a business, in my opinion. And my hope is that I take you through, the next 30 minutes and change your perspective when it comes to how you're tackling social, and allow you to have a fresh perspective. So in the next 4 parts, your job as a marketer, and not unfortunately, but as a business owner, you are a marketer, you're a content creator, you're maybe the shipper and receiver, you're the CFO, the CEO, you're all the things. But as a marketer, it is your job to drive the mental and physical availability of your intended audience. And what I mean by that is that mental availability, are people thinking about your brand at the right time? And the physical availability, whether they can actually find you. Can they buy you? Can they sign up with you? Can they book you? All the things. With social, you have the access to do both of those things. And that access is literally right at your fingertips. But just because you're posting daily, or when you remember to, doesn't mean you're driving your business forward. So as I take you through each part of today's agenda, my hope is that I simplify your efforts on social, give you the tools or motivation to work harder and not smarter. And, we'll start off with the 5 things that you need to know. And again, these are the 5 things that are, in my opinion, you need to know. Talk about platform importance. I really am a huge believer that you do not need to be everywhere. Yes, prioritizing your platforms is a must, but you have to understand your audience, where they are, if they're on the platform, and not just be there because it's the next thing to do. I'm going to talk about a few mistakes, myths, and trends, and then also talk about what it means to create a content action plan. So first, the 5 things that you need to know. What are those 5 things? Well, rethinking your marketing point of view, the 5-to-1 rule as it applies to types of content. I've already said this, but showing up on social versus showing up on social, social listening, and your analytics. So let's start off with your marketing point of view. So try not to categorize actions as an entrepreneur as mistakes, but honestly, the number 1 mistake that I see brands and small businesses doing is pushing out content that is talking about information, the how-to, the tactics, the strategy. But information is honestly everywhere. So if you can rethink your marketing point of view from information to transformation, that's where you're going to move the needle. Everybody has access to Google, whatever your preferred search engine is. But what makes your information and what you're sharing, not your information, but what makes what you're sharing unique? If your message can change how people think or what they believe, that's where you're going to move the needle. People are going to get bored. If you're only always talking about information, you're going to become commoditized. So, you have to think beyond that. Are you actually investing in solving a problem for your intended audience? What makes your content stand out? What are you doing different? And what makes you unique? If your message can change how people think or change what they believe, this is often where that real change comes in. It's how you get noticed and it's how you grow. So how do you do this? You talk about your story, talk about your successes, talk about your failures and your struggles, your fears. You need to motivate your customers, your clients, your community, and aim to solve a problem for them. It's more than just talking at them. It's making them, being relatable, giving them something to relate to. You want that aha moment where they read your read your quote or read your caption or look at your infographic or look at your offer and say, that's, I relate to that. You want to get them from where they are to where they want to be. And this comes with being aware of what you're sharing. And that awareness starts with you and your business and your brand. So that brings me to what I like to call the 5-to-1 rule. So what is the 5-to-1 rule? First, I want you to think about, are you making an effort to strike a balance in the content that you share? I completely understand balance it's not easy in any part of your life. It takes work. But as a business owner, with social playing such a large part in what draws people to your brand, the key is to not to talk about yourself all day, every day. It's a really nice way to turn people off and fast. You all have, I'm sure, that annoying friend on Facebook or Instagram that brags, and then you eventually hide them from your timeline or unfollow them or unfriend them. You do not want to be that brand. There's no perfect equation to the 5-to-1 rule. You honestly need to find your own formula, because I get it. You want to share your wins, but not everybody wants, think about it like making your wins relevant to your audience. If you can change that mindset, you're on the right path there. So finding your own formula in the simplest terms, what that means is for every 5 pieces of content that you share, those pieces of content should offer value. Ask yourself, does this offer value? And every 6th piece of content that you share can be, it can be that me post, if you will. But my suggestion would be to leverage fun content, something that humanizes your brand to your audience, and something that gives them, a reason to remember you. In creating your content plan, the 5-to-1 rule should be at the forefront of your mind. So I realize there's a lot to think about when it comes to, it's not as easy as like, okay, well, now I know that I need to be talking about things of value. But how do I do that? You have a lot of options when it comes to your content. And when you start thinking about planning it, you not only need to be mindful of your goals, of your business, your intention, and so much more, but you have to decide the type of content that is going to achieve those goals. And by type of content, I'm literally referring to type of content, whether it's a written post, a live recorded video, a recorded video, photos, reels, TikToks. This will largely be dictated by the platform you're on and your goals, but the best way to approach it is by asking yourself, how can I make this content work for me? I will get into that a little bit more later as far as your content working for you, but there's content that grows a community, there's content that grows a brand, and there's content that moves your audience through a purchase pipeline. So either way, your content needs to have purpose. And I have a nice formula I want to share with you on how to ensure purpose in the content that you share. So I like to break it down into these categories, if you will. Helpers are posts that educate in some way and build goodwill with your audience. They establish you as knowledgeable, trustworthy, and credible. Your engagers, by soliciting feedback and engagement from your audience, you're demonstrating to them, okay, I'm a good listener. I can learn from this person. And in turn, you can improve your products and services based on the feedback that you get. This is exactly what you need from your community. Selling. You offer things, obviously sales. So keeping people at the forefront of your mind. However, it's not just about the products and services that you sell. What other transactions are important to your business, whether that's email lists, driving people to your website, driving people to your webinar. There are different types of selling, but these should all aim to move your business forward. Catalysts. So these are my favorite type of posts. These are the super juicy, informative, highly generous in as far as information goes. I love these, and I think that the algorithm does as well, which we will again talk about a little bit more later. And barrier busters. These are posts that basically break down objections or questions for why people would want to work with you. You need to give them a reason to believe they should be working with you before they actually make that decision. So in a way, these posts are kind of self-serving, but not in the same way as that, in the 5-to-1 rule. You want to make sure that you can prove to them that you can help them overcome their objections. There is an element of selling here, but it's more of like a value proposition way. So now that you know the 5-to-1 rule, you know what you need to post and that you need to post with purpose. To find your formula, I have an equation that I think is invaluable when it comes to what you share on social. So I like to call this my value track formula. Before you share anything, take a step, not even just before you share, before you create or invest in creating anything. Sit down and ask yourself these questions. Who is this for? Is this for your current audience? Is this for a prospective client? Fill in the blank based on your business objectives. I think one of the things that people forget is that if your audience is already following you on a platform, you should be trying to serve not just them, but grow additional audience. So that's another thing to kind of think about. I think that also comes in with the main takeaway. So the takeaway could be anything from the message you're sharing in your story. Maybe you're sharing a win. Maybe you're sharing a recent hurdle, something you've overcome. Maybe you're sharing a resource. Maybe it's a tip. What is that? That's where that value play comes in. And then the desired action. What action do you want them to take after reading, watching, whatever content they're consuming of yours? What action are you trying to incite from that actual piece of content? And that's where your call of action comes in. If you get hung up on any of these questions and you cannot answer them all, start again. Go back and start again. And don't create that piece of content or put that piece of content out there until you can answer these. So your call to action is something that I talked about a little bit. You don't have much time to capture people's attention, but it's worth applying the content formula to the content that you create, especially when it comes to captions. This is, not only helps draw people in, but it helps to serve as a framework for how you start to talk to your audience and your community. So your hook. You'll never believe what I am about to admit. Like, draw them in that first sentence and then provide a piece of insight. I started my business when X and I wanted to X, so I decided to X. Share that insight into your story or whatever it is that your piece of content is driving to do. And then a call to action. What have you always dreamed of doing? Your call to action doesn't have to incite, somebody to comment. It can drive them somewhere. But I think whatever action your content drives, it's important to know that this directly impacts a portion of everybody's favorite word, and that is the algorithm. We all make social what it is, and your interactions with content determine its success. So what this means is your engagement, your shares, your comments, your interaction with the content you're consuming determines its virality on social. But there are actually 3 key behaviors that the algorithm looks at. And let's talk about those a little bit. So your behavior matters on social. And the 3 main factors that play a role in this, and it's not specific to any platform, it's more broadly speaking. And obviously on some platforms, there are other measured behavior metrics, but broadly speaking, your relationship, interest, and relevancy impact who sees your content and what content you see. So relationship. If your followers have interacted with a lot of your past content, and they are more likely to see your future content. So let me give you the example of Instagram stories. Everybody's opened up Instagram or Facebook. Everybody's opened up the app. And if you go into your Instagram stories, and you watch the first 5 stories, and then you get tired because you probably are following 500 people and you never get through everybody's stories, or not everybody has stories. The next time you open that app, you're going to see, if those people have stories up, you're going to see those same people's stories. So one piece of advice on how to change that and how to hack the algorithm in a sense, scroll all the way to the end of your stories. Interact with the people whose stories aren't coming up in your feed as often because you don't get to them in that lineup. I think it's important to make sure you're paying attention to stuff like that because your behavior really matters. The main job of the algorithm on any platform is to keep the followers or subscribers on the platform. And it does this by showing you the content that you're interested in, you're engaging with, and that's relevant to you and your audience. So relationship is if your followers have interacted. Interests, the algorithm gives people more of what they want based on their relationship and behavior. So if you're commenting, if you're viewing, if you're sending a DM of a reaction in a story, the algorithm picks up on all those things. It's tracking your behavior. And then relevancy. So I could probably do a whole class entirely on the algorithm, but there's a ranking signal that determines how relevant your content is to the audience. So say you are a travel brand and you are taking, if you are posting a blog post a week, and that blog post then becomes 3 pieces of content, and those 3 pieces of content serve a purpose within the travel community to share the best beach cities to rent a house this Memorial Day and whatever that is. And then all of a sudden you post a piece of content that has nothing to do with anything that you've posted over the last, month. That post is probably not going to perform as well, just based on the relevancy to that audience. Again, if your strategy as a brand does include more content that isn't niche down, yes, you have the likeliness of that piece of content to, it's part of your approach already. But when you're thinking about what you're posting, relevancy, and think about that, the ranking signals, because it matters. And while those 3 factors keep, the algorithm tracks, the algorithm's doing their job keeping people on the platform, it's important that you're tracking your analytics to understand what your audience is responding to. Their interactions with your content matter, and they should help you inform your future content decisions. So track, analyze, and let those inform, a like, a comment, a share, a save. Go into your analytics. Every platform aggregates them differently, but pay attention to them and try and give your audience more of what you've seen they are engaging with. So, if you want to make sure that you're giving your audience a satisfaction, I think that content that is shareable, that is highly shareable, obviously, relatable, funny, educational content, all of those things. If people are sharing your content, a share is way more valuable and a save is way more valuable than a like. More shares equals more eyes on your content, then that equals growth. If you are just creating content that's adding noise, like rethink posting that. I think overall, you don't get to decide what's valuable for your audience and what isn't. Your audience decides that. And when you think about it that way, it makes your job easier. So all you have to do is look at your analytics and be tracking them. That's a great place to start. So you understand what's resonating with your audience. So again, your interactions determine the success and virality of contents. It's worth remembering that vanity metrics like a view or a like, unless you're monetizing your content in that sense, they don't necessarily translate into achieving your business objectives. So while tracking your analytics is important, don't just jump on this hamster wheel of content creation You have to make sure that your efforts are tied to actually moving the needle for your brand or business. And it's important to remember that relationship, interests, and relevancy matter when it comes to the algorithm and the platform, which brings me to showing up on social and what that means. So what do I mean by showing up on social? I kind of like to think of this as box checking syndrome, if you will. If you're approaching social just because you think you have to, but you really haven't drilled down why you're there, now is the time. It's more time. It's more of the optimal time to do this than ever. Stop just checking boxes, have a plan, set your goals, start small, test content, look at what the competition is doing, get to know your audience, get creative, and grow a community. If you have a plan, I promise you that your efforts will be worth it if you actually put in the time to drill down what that plan is. So now that you're ready to show up on social in the right way, let's talk about where you actually should be showing up. So platform importance. This is a loaded one. I think the best way to think about where you should be is be realistic with how much time you actually have. I would suggest selecting a priority platform and then optimizing content from there. Not on this list, but it's on the next page, is YouTube. I am a huge fan of prioritizing content on YouTube. I understand it's a huge beast, but I think that if you can take one piece of content and optimize it across multiple different platforms, that goes back to what I said in the beginning. You're making your content work for you. Even if it's not YouTube, and say that you have a newsletter, your newsletter that you've spent time to write and to build assets for, each of those components of your newsletter can become a piece of content. Maybe you take your main message from your newsletter and you create stories that day, speaking to your audience. Those dynamic stories are highly favored by the algorithm. And I think they also humanize your brand and give your audience a chance to connect with you. So take what you put in that newsletter and turn it into a story. If you're not comfortable doing a story, create an edited video. Take your main takeaway from that and use it as a tweet. And that tweet links out to your landing page to sign up for the newsletter, and then they get the full thing. There's so many different ways that you can kind of pick your priority platform or pick your priority, like prioritize your content and then make your content work for you. And I think really where you choose to be should directly correspond with your goals as a business. You know, Facebook is great for word of mouth awareness, event registrations, link clicks. You know, there's 2.32 billion people on Facebook. It's the largest social platform, second to or next to YouTube. You know, for Twitter, real-time news driven, there's that strong customer service element, link clicks, engagement, all things that happen there. I think, you know, for LinkedIn, obviously professionally driven content consumption, but people are going to LinkedIn with a purpose, whereas you're on Instagram and you're just there because it's probably habit by now. But purposeful content moves the needle on LinkedIn. Purposeful content moves the needle everywhere, but I think that people are there looking for something, just like they're looking for something on Pinterest. Pinterest really is catering to life moments, the lifestyle, the DIY. It's highly curated, and the benefits for let's go back to the travel brand there is that you have the opportunity for that direct click through to shop, click through to book. You know, again, five beach vacations you need to take in the next, you know, over the summer. I think there's a lot of things that you can, I love Pinterest. I think it is still highly underutilized, especially by brands, because the way that people go to that platform and consume content, it's based on if you're looking for a wedding dress, if you're looking for, a packable hat, all the things, Pinterest is great. So if we go to where you should be, again, this is just, I think you need to let your product or service guide you. I think choosing a platform honestly depends on really drilling down and understanding your goals. Be honest and realistic with yourself and where you can actually maintain consistency. Just because Clubhouse, which is not on here, is the new thing, do you need to be there and be in the swirl? Is it beneficial? From the voiceover perspective, yes, it could be beneficial. I think that there is a huge community there. There's a lot of opportunity to grow, but if it becomes taxing in regards to, you're not actually spending time there to move your business forward, then you're just going to burn out. So whether you're willing to admit it or not, you wear many hats as a business owner. And I think from a mindset perspective, tackling social to be successful, prioritize a platform, optimize your content, and that's going to help you to really kind of avoid burnout. Myths, mistakes, and trends. All right, so let's talk about some myths. Mistakes are a part of the process. I don't like to necessarily categorize things as a mistake, but in my opinion, they help you kind of really figure out what you don't want to do again. From building brand trust, showing up on social, and building a foundation. Those are the three buckets that I constantly see business owners and even myself making mistakes in. I think that social media sales funnel, or social media funnel, if you will, can look very similar to a sales funnel. Your customer pyramid is one stage of that sales funnel, of your social funnel, and seeking to understand is building trust. So if you can build trust as a brand, then it's a win. For me, I think that, action can no longer be a one-time contribution, and more consumers are looking for authenticity when it comes to brands that they choose to invest in. And authenticity, consistency, and customer service is something that is going to help you build trust as a brand. So showing up on social, we've already talked about this a little bit. If you are just checking boxes and not moving the needle forward, take stock of where you're spending your time and reevaluate and build a foundation. I think that, obviously knowing the functions and the foundation of each platform that you choose to be on is important. But more important than that is, once you've actually selected to be on those platforms, how are you building a foundation on them? Like, how are you actually implementing a strategy that's helping you? Nobody likes making mistakes when it comes to creating content, but it's something you have to take a hard look at when what you are creating. I think that, go from, stop planning last minute and start creating content calendars. Use your analytics to help you look at what content has performed historically well, and stop sharing unuseful content. Share relevant content. Stop giving your audience what you think they want, and use your analytics to give them what they actually want. The foundation is key, and you got to get off the content hamster wheel. I think that's a key takeaway. And a lot of people also, I feel like, don't repurpose content. If you have a blog post that may have gone up last year, things change. Social moves so fast. Instead of rewriting an entire new blog post and trying to think of the topic, go back and revisit what you've already put out there. Make it fresh, make it new, put a new spin on it. That's part of your strategy and foundation. And now myths. I wanted to kind of do something fun here as far as myths. So I switched it around, three lies and one truth. So these are the 3 lies here. Social media marketing tactics don't drive bottom line and results. Only people who are saying that are people who don't have a plan in place. Social media is only about engaging in conversation. Engagement is important. Yes, there's a social element of social media, but it's not the only thing that it's about. And social media is completely free. Yes, it's free to be there, free to sign up. But like I said, your time is money. And not only that, if you're working on creating content that's worth seeing and you haven't considered some form of ad strategy, just, just saying. And then going to my truth. Okay, so this is kind of sort of a truth. I don't think that there really is a magic formula to social media, but I think that when you can make an action plan, this equation works. So consistently driving value to your audience and being real will equal success, in my opinion. And now your content action plan. What does this mean? So next slide. I say now that social media has been simplified, but again, there's nothing simple about it. I want to kind of talk about, so much goes into your day as a business owner. Almost every single function of your day can some way equal content. Unfortunately, I don't practice what I preach in that capacity because I have several clients and I am the one that's driving the creative and content and all the things for them. So I don't do a lot for myself, but almost every function of your day can in some way be a piece of content. So how can you use that content to work for you? And I think it's a matter of creating a content action plan. And what is that? So we talked about the different types of posts in the beginning here. And if you can have a plan for purposeful content, again, I believe you will see results. So think about, what are your business buckets? Are you planning for a webinar? Are you packaging up a product? Are you in the booth recording maybe it's a project you can't talk about, but how can you take your moment in that booth and create content around it? I think there's a lot of different business buckets that we just go through the motions as business owners and don't even think about them as ways that we can actually think more circularly instead of linearly. So stack your business functions. Pick one day a week where you're going to say, all right, it's almost like a come to work with me social media day, and you don't have to post everything in real time. But how are you actually stacking business functions to make sure you're servicing social? I think it's obviously a plan is key in making that happen, and thinking about the type of content that you share and who your intended audience is. But if you can choose 4 content pillars for your brand or your business, let's take something like a barrier buster, something that sells, and then something that helps, and you boil it down to, say, 3 posts a week on TBD platform. Obviously, you should be incorporating stories, reels, shorts, whatever it is, whatever platform you're on, IGTV, depending upon the platform. And then you choose 2 main goals, whether that's a call to action for the month. So maybe it's you want to focus on a month worth of email signups. You want to focus on webinar signups for your month. Whatever that, insert your specific business goal here, but you want something that you can measure. And then you have 1 month of content planned. So choose 4 content pillars, 3 posts a week, and 2 main call to actions, and measure your results. How many signups did you get at the end of the month? How many people signed up for your webinar? If you are sharing 3 posts a week, what did your efforts do to drive your business forward? Social media is not it's unfortunately not an automated part of your business. It takes work. But when you can create a process behind it and you can stack functions that are circular versus linear and take stock of where your time is being spent and set goals, I think, having a plan, you can have fun. So that brings me to having a plan. So once you've decided the types of content that you want to share and you figured out the intended audience and whether your posts are intended to help people or engage people or sell to people, it's important to start to templatize your approach so that you can reuse, whether it's video, whether it's static posts. So I'm a huge fan of templatizing things in Canva, which is what I'm going to give you guys as a part of being here today. These are fully customizable Canva templates that will allow you to insert your brand or business and customize for your purposes. So here we have a helper post. We have an engager post. There is a selling post. I've created one for a catalyst. If you're putting an enticing quote there, share something juicy and informative. Be generous with your audience about why that quote is relevant to you. And then barrier busters. I think that, if you can, for me, what's relevant is 3 tips for creating stronger content. But if I can tell you, oh, here's how I create stronger content, and that catalyst post or that barrier buster post becomes something that has that element of selling in it, you're driving your business forward. So these will be given to you. I will be sending an email out to everybody afterwards. So before we go to the next slide, or before we get into the next slide, I just want to give you kind of a recap of the action plan. I think choose 4 content pillars, decide how often you want to post, and choose those 2 goals, and then use your templates to insert content that's relevant for your plan. And that will help you have that purposeful content plan. So the next thing I want to share is I think it's really important to have a social manifesto. I think this really, to me, sums up everything we've kind of talked about without saying, here are your takeaways. So I challenge you to create one for yourself, but I just want to read through this and hopefully it resonates with you, or there's one thing that stands out that you decide to implement for your business or your brand moving forward. So my social manifesto is: I create content that I would consume myself. I always seek to learn about my customer, and I use that knowledge to improve. There's where your analytics come in. What is your customer engaging with? I am generous with my knowledge and my expertise. I tell the truth. I'm genuine in sharing my ups and downs, and I never misrepresent. I put out positive things that I want back in my own business. I believe in community over competition. I embrace the content change of social, and I see it as an opportunity to stay creative. And I know that vanity metrics do not define the health of my business. I cannot say that one enough. So that being said, I would like to leave you with 3 tools and 1 resource for you to check out. You're going to need Canva to utilize the templates that I share for you. As a small business, I think, the more your business grows, sure, you can afford to hire a designer, somebody who's, uses Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop. And, it's important to have some of those in your tool belt. But I also highly, highly recommend utilizing Canva. It's a platform that is basically a one-stop shop for content creation. They're constantly evolving their tools and their offering from templates for every single platform. But they also have some sort of like scheduling thing they've recently launched. It's great. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. Later. So Later is a platform that allows you to plan, schedule, and publish your content. Again, great resource, very invaluable when it comes to planning content, always changing or evolving. They've recently implemented Pinterest. They are now implementing LinkedIn. They don't have a function for Reels, but there's, I'm sure, going to evolve as Reels continues to evolve. Trello is a content comprehensive calendar, but better. This is great if you have a team of people who are working on ideation and different boards, different projects. Maybe you have social campaigns. Trello is huge and instrumental. I also use Google Docs. I love a good content calendar in a Google Docs, and actually that's what I use for my clients. And one resource. So Matt Navarra is the author of Geek Out Newsletter, which is sponsored by Hootsuite. It honestly is a once a week newsletter that has I don't want to say everything, but almost everything that you need to know about social, the industry news, platform updates, new tools, features. There's also a social media humor section. So, I think that I obviously find humor in a social meme, but yeah, those are my 3 tools and my resource. So I hope that each of you that joined today will walk away with that new perspective when it comes to social, a fresh perspective. I understand that social can be overwhelming, but as I mentioned in the beginning, digital has never been more essential for your brand. It's the first place that your client, customer, consumer, and I'm sure you, when you're looking at other businesses, look before you actually decide if you want to do business with somebody or buy something from somebody. And, it has allowed a lot of us to maintain our client relationships over the past year and probably even sell more. We're living in an age where it's no longer an option. So stop tackling it with this approach like, oh shoot, I need to post something and scramble to get it and then wonder why you're not getting results. Have a plan, have an action plan, implement the things that we have talked about or I've talked about today, and the results will follow. I promise you. I want to open it up to some Q&A. If there is any questions, let me see if I can open up the Q&A. It looks like no one has any questions. If you have a question, you can drop it in the Q&A. If not, you can find me on social. I will follow up with our templates after this. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, everywhere, doing exactly what I told you not to do. But let's see. How late is too late to respond to a post on IG and Twitter? Too late, meaning like months have gone by. I think that you obviously want to be sure that you're servicing your clients. So don't just not respond because you feel like it's too late. I think that recognizing that you've taken a while to respond is key there. From my perspective, I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook as a brand, but if somebody messages me there, I actually have had someone message me and say like, oh, you clearly don't care about your clients. I think it's a rationalization from the perspective of, hey, like, you know what, I apologize. Here's where I actually am active. And if you have questions like this in the future, the best way to get a hold of me is X. So I think it's never too late to respond to a post. Again, same answer there. I was thinking that was a DM. Same thing there. You can always, if you feel like it's too late to respond to something and you want to slide into their DMs with the response, maybe that's the best way, but I don't think ever is too late for either of those. And as far as Twitter goes, the life of a tweet is, I want to say like 20 minutes. My suggestion to clients is that you should probably be on Twitter, with tweets 5 to 10 times a day. I think the content funnel is constantly moving. So yeah. And how long is too long to respond to a post on it? Same question. So there we go. I've answered both of those. Anybody else have any other questions? Well, thank you. Oh, wait, hold on. How bad is it to mix your personal and professional social media accounts if you're a freelancer? I think that this depends. I honestly struggled with that myself. It really depends on what your objectives are. I don't think it's bad. I did not share this webinar on my personal account just because I only shared it with good friends. But I also think that it depends the nature of your business. I think that if you think there's value in sharing it on your personal account, then there probably is. But from a social perspective, I'm a fan of streamlining your efforts. Again, don't practice what I preach in that regard, because I have a separate account for Social Lemonaid and a separate account for my personal, but that's because I've had my personal account since the beginning of Instagram, and I don't even know who's on there anymore. So I felt that it was more important for me to niche down and to start fresh as a consultant, and to make sure that my efforts were targeted on a community that would actually move my brand, Social Lemonaid, forward. So I would say it's not bad to mix it. It just depends on what your goals are. Okay, well, I think, can you repeat what business buckets are again? Anonymous attendee, the business buckets. Let's see here. So as far as business buckets, I think that's going to depend on what your company is, but let me give you the example of a strategy that's built around, let's use voiceover as an example. Okay, so if you're defining your content pillars as a voiceover artist, and if you want to take and stack your functions from like a business bucket perspective, what goes into a day of a voiceover artist? You probably are going to the studio. So before you get to the studio, you probably are doing vocal warm-ups. You probably aren't going to be able to share what you're actually going to the studio for. So I would say that your prep should be a business bucket and creating content around that. I also think that, your efforts that you put into content creation from like a social perspective, those can extend to a newsletter. So it's a matter of like looking at your day in the life of your business and just taking stock of what functions you actually do throughout the day, and figure out where you can stack those functions to then define, all right, prep for X can become one of my content pillars. And then from there, what can I create around that? Can I create a piece of video content? Can I create a story? Can I create a post? Can I create a newsletter? The idea is to change your perspective from just going through the motions to then creating this content creation circle that offers value for your audience, but also it also streamlines your efforts as a business owner. And can I repeat barrier buster? Yes. So the barrier busters are the posts that really break down, the barriers and objections to why somebody would work with you as a business owner. What do you need people to believe before, or recognize, or what can provide that level of trust of why they should work with you? Like I said, in a way, it's kind of a self-serving post, but it's not self-serving in that like I'm patting myself on the back. It's more of like you help prove that you can help your ideal client or customer overcome or to achieve something. So they're overcoming their objections of why they would not want to work with you. There's an element of selling, but it's like an informative element. And are people really reading a newsletter? Do they have time to read a newsletter? How long does it have to be? Absolutely. I think that it depends on what you're offering from a newsletter perspective. Like if you are writing about something that's relevant for your industry or writing about something that offers value, people will read it. I just think it's a matter of, making sure that you're thinking of the environment that people are consuming the content. I don't think there's an ideal length to, there's no too long or too short. I think there's too long for sure. But as far as, too short, I like to think of the Steve Jobs power of 3. If you can give people 3 points of information that offer value for them, and you can set that up, like, here's the too long didn't read version, but if you want to read more, it's all in your delivery. So that's my thought about, are people actually reading a newsletter? And by newsletter, I'm not saying like a paper newsletter. It's like a digital newsletter, just in case. Okay, well, I think that, oh wait, there's one more question here. So we still have a few more minutes. As an actress, I'm always having a hard time trying to figure out what kind of content to post. I know people in the industry also look at profiles. So is there a specific type of content that would attract them more to me? If you have lots of different interests and hobbies, do I just post those things? I know. Okay. Gosh. Okay. Loaded question. I think I get it. It is hard, but be yourself. Be yourself, but also let the personalities that you audition for shine through in your content. I think there's a level of humor or seriousness, whatever type of actress you are, that will allow your audience to appreciate what you're sharing, but also offer industry professionals a peek into what they could potentially work with. I think there's a fine balance. It goes back to finding what format or what formula works for you. I like the idea of sharing interests and hobbies. I don't think that those hurt you to share there, but also just make sure that that value proposition. Go back to those 4 questions that I mentioned, and ask yourself those questions before you actually share that content. And I think that will help you decide, who you're actually serving, what content, what your content formula is. I hope that answers your question. How long for a video? Depends on the platform. It depends on the platform. For a story, it's 15 seconds. For a feed post 1 by 1, it's 60 seconds. For Reels, it's 15 or 30, right? YouTube Shorts, 1 minute to, I think it's 1 minute. And if you're doing, it depends. It really depends. You can email me and I'll chat with you more about that. Okay. Well, thank you all again for coming to Social Media Simplified. I know there's nothing simple to it, so Godspeed and have fun. That's all I can say, and I appreciate all of you attending today. Thank you so much.